I'll let you get back to it. It sounds like you got some conditions tonight up on your end.
Well, I'll sit back there, and I want to sit back and listen after a minute. 425, number 4 is waving evening time.
Straighten up my antenna, boy. I ain't getting out, right?
Alright, back, and I thought I would do just the STRYKER SR-A10 complete disassembly and reassembly, just because, as I said before, except for most of these, they just have a whip that slides down in the mast there with a couple of set screws. This one, as you know, the load screws off of here, but this is the only one that really comes apart and has a light and everything else in there. So while I took it apart earlier in the other video, it really wasn't a very up close as detailed as I would like it to be, so that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to disassemble it, reassemble it, and in the middle of that we're going to remove the light board in there and show you how that works. So zoom in here a little bit on her. Okay, so first things first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a little more room here first off. Once again, you try having all these antennas on your workbench and not having some kind of catastrophe here. Alright, so we got our STRYKER SR-A10 antenna here. Just to show you what it does when you key up. I don't know if you can see that lighting up in there. Against my better judgment, I'm turning off the light in here, so everybody better behave. Alright, so once again, you can see that thing light up when you key up. Some people like that, some people don't. Regardless, I'm going to show you how to disconnect it, and then just basically how to disassemble and reassemble the antenna in the process. So, alright, first off, you're going to need an Allen wrench. And what we basically got going on here is you've got your whip, of course, here. Let me make sure I got this kind of centered and in frame here. Alright. See how much room I got to work here. You've got this whip here. It comes down into this mast. I guess you'd call this little 2.5 inch metal riser here a mast. Goes into your mast with 2 set screws. Then your mast screws onto this brass 3/8 24 thread. I believe it's a 3/8 24 thread that comes up through the top of here. But before you unscrew this off of here, you got to loosen this set screw, because if you don't loosen this set screw and you try to take this off, you're going to booger those threads up real good. So there's a couple different ways you could do this. You could unscrew this and take the mast and the whip off with it still on the base, or you could unscrew it off the base. Probably a little easier to do it if you unscrew this whole thing off the base. So I'm just going to remove the whole antenna from the base here. I'm just going to move the base out of the way. Then I'm going to try and make some room here with all these whips. Okay. Alright. So now we've just got our load and our mast and our whip. We're going to take this little set screw here and loosen it a few turns. You could take it out or just loosen it several turns, whichever you feel. And you need to put a wrench on there, so just make sure you've got, this thing turned in opposite direction, because you're not going to be able to get the wrench on here all the way with the set screw. So either take the set screw out or turn this so that you can get the wrench on there. And you're just going to want to basically put the wrench on there and then just loosen this with your hand, because it should only be on there kind of hand tight, snug, Take our wrench off. And our load is free from the whip and the mast. Okay. Now we've just got our load here. Now this top right here, once again, there's an O-ring here. And on the first time I took this thing apart, this O-ring, it was so small that it just kind of got wrapped around these threads a little bit here, and then when I started pulling this thing up off of there, the O-ring kind of got caught between the threads in the hole, and it just kind of shredded the O-ring. So I got another O-ring. But I believe that's a weak spot on these antennas, because this O-ring is probably not the perfect fitting thing around here. And if you get one that's too small or too soft, if you get any water in here and it gets in there, that could cause you some problems. So if you're going to put a better O-ring on there or weatherproof your antenna in some way, this is probably the area that I would pay attention to the most. Because like I said, all these things here are fake. They're just plastic risers on here. And when you go to pull the rest of this thing off, you've got a little bit of an O-ring and seal in here that seals against this edge here. So once again, your biggest spot area where you're going to get water in is where this where your mast screws down on here. So maybe put a little bit of silicone in here and then put your mast on there, and then maybe put a little bit on the outside of it, and that would probably do you pretty good. But anyways, after you get off your mast and your whip, take your O-ring off, and you might want to check in here because there's a little bit of a ridge, kind of a seat area in here. Your O-ring could conceivably be in here somewhere too. So but if it's on your shaft here, get the O-ring off, take your O-ring off. We got our O-ring there. Then we're going to take our lid off, and the lid just comes off like that. So then you got this. Then just hold the bottom here, and then just gently pull up on the center sleeve like that. And they do make sleeves to go either on the inside of this or maybe on the outside for a carbon fiber look, and then also to cover up the lights if you don't want to go in and disconnect the lights. But anyways, this is pretty much how the sleeve is. The only thing you want to make sure is it's got these little spacers here on the coil to kind of keep this thing sort of centered on there. You want to make sure that these spacer things here are not right in front of your window here when you put this back on there, so otherwise you might not be able to see your lights as well if you're leaving the light part hooked up. Otherwise it wouldn't matter. But once again, make sure your holes, your windows here, aren't looking right at one of these little white spacers there. So anyway, so now we got the lid off, got the sleeve off, and so now we're just down to the load here. This little green disc down here is the LED board, I guess you could say. And there's a little bit of got to take this apart to get to it. So got your load here. Got two nuts on here. This top one's basically just a jam nut. And we're going to get the second one here. Okay. So we got two nuts there and a split washer. Then we've got a flat washer. Then we've got our LED board with a two-piece plastic spacer in the center of it. This spacer basically, it's thicker and on the back side and has an edge that goes through the hole of the back side of the LED board. And when I say back side of the LED board, okay, I need to find that. When I say back side of the LED board, this would be the front because that's where the LEDs are, and looks like there's a couple of diodes on there or something. But anyways, this just basically goes in the back like that, and then that other piece that I just dropped on the floor goes on this side here. So basically, like I said, you've got the back side of the LED board, this part of the spacer here with the little step here. This goes through the back side, and then this part here pops onto the other side. Really it does. Okay, there we go. Then we've got another flat washer and a brass spacer. And that's it for everything that's on here. This thing here is just part of the contact that the coil's screwed to. So that's pretty much it for everything that's bolted to that brass shaft there. So now, if you didn't want to have your lights working, you basically just pop the spacer out of here, take your LED board out, and put this spacer back together. Let me check my camera to make sure I'm even remotely in frame here on some of this. Okay, we're still doing good. Okay, so you'd remove your LED board and you put your spacer back here. Then you would just take and put your brass bushing on, your next flat washer on, your spacer that used to have the LED board in it on, your next flat washer on, your next split washer on, and your nut. You just want to tighten this nut. You've got that split washer on there, so you just want to tighten this nut enough to flatten that washer and just snug it up a little bit, and that's good enough. Because remember, you got this nut here is basically a jam nut for this one, so. Okay, there you go. And from then, we're just going to take, we're going to put our sleeve on here. Once again, make sure your STRYKER logo is facing, just the bottom of your load there. Make sure your STRYKER logo is facing, down, and your windows aren't right in the way of any of those little spacers. And then just kind of got to finagle that a little bit to get down in there, but it goes. Just kind of got to twist it and move it and rock it around a little bit, and it goes in there. Same thing with the lid. Let's put our lid on. Check my camera here. Put our lid on here like that, and then our O-ring. Turn it on its side and start screwing our mass back onto it. And then again, we're just going to put our wrench on here. And just tighten it by hand. You can kind of feel it. It kind of gets tight and then just kind of turns another little eighth of a turn, and I don't know how to explain it, but you can just kind of tell that's where it wants to be. We're going to move our LED board out of the way over here. Set this back on our base here. Alright. And last but not least, let's not forget to tighten our little Allen wrench here for the mast here. Alright, and we'll hook up our antenna again. And no light, which I'll show you. Okay, now just to prove that that was in fact the proper thing to do to disconnect the light. Yep, gonna take it all apart again and put it back in there. So again, we're going to undo our, make sure my camera's still going here. We're going to undo our set screw for the mast, and then we're going to unscrew the mast off of that 3/8 24 brass stud that's coming through the lid there. Again, the last time I think I unscrewed the load off of here, but I don't need to do that. Honestly, if you don't want to, you really don't have to remove it from the base at all. You could just leave it on there. But we got to make sure we get our O-ring off of there, and that's what happened the last time. I just pulled up on this hoping the O-ring would pop off, and that O-ring got in between these threads in the housing here, and it just shredded it, so had to get another O-ring. So, alright, pulling that thing off like that there, and again we're just going to hold down and pull our sleeve off like that, and we can get to everything we need to get to right there if we want. So again, we're going to take this top nut off of here. You do want to hold this, you know, while you're loosening these nuts on here. Here's our first one. Our second one. Our split washer, our flat washer, our spacer that needs to have the LED board reinserted, our next flat washer, and our brass spacer. Of course, we really don't need to take these two off of here, so I'll just put this one back on, this flat washer back on. I'm going to go ahead and just pop this thing apart real quick. Again, this part's the thicker part with the shoulder. It goes through the back side of this. And this part here just basically, you know, pops onto that edge right there. Okay, like that. I just had a battery glitch there, so in case I glitch some of this stuff, we're putting that spacer here with the edge on this side. Got that on there like that. We're putting that on there. Next we've got our flat washer. Then we've got our split washer. Then we've got one of our nuts, our first one. And you just want to tighten this nut down just enough to flatten the split washer. And once it's flat and starting giving you some resistance, just a tiny little turn and you're good to go. Then this one here is just pretty much a jam nut. Keep this from ever having to spin. Make sure when you're tightening this jam nut you've only got the wrench on it and not, you know, the bottom one. And they're probably not going to line up, you know, they're not, the flats probably won't line up, so that's okay. Okay, alright, we're all back together there. We got all of our parts in order there. Now all we need to do is we need to put our spacer piece back on, and of course all we need to do here, we need to make sure our striker is facing down so it'll read properly, and we need to make sure that none of these little spacers are in the way of our little windows here if we're going to have our light hooked up. So you can just kind of look down in here and make sure that none of those spacers are in front of any of these windows. Again, you kind of need to lift this thing up. Again, there's kind of a groove down in there with an O-ring, but you need to kind of finagle this and wiggle it a little bit to get it in there. Make sure that it's not crooked. It is plastic, so you know when you're putting it together, you just kind of got to be, you know, careful with it. You want to make sure that it's just seated, so when you put that on and tighten this on, you don't have any problems. Okay, so we got that on there. Now we're going to put our lid on there. Same thing with this. It's got your green O-ring thing in there. Put that down. Make sure we're good all the way around there. And again, probably mentioned it 10 times before, but if you're going to, if the water's going to get in here, it's going to get in probably through here. So here's the O-ring here. probably a little bit thicker, fatter O-ring, and then maybe some silicone on the outside of your mast once you got it on there would probably do this thing some favors. But anyways, this is the way it comes stock. So, but again, these things here are fake, so water's not going to get in here, and this edge kind of comes down, so biggest place is going to be here. All right, we got our lid on, got our O-ring on. Now we're going to put our mast and our whip on. Again, a little bit of clear silicone around there is probably where I'd put it if I was going to put anything on there. We're going to put our wrench on here. And we're just going to turn this until we start feeling it get kind of snug, and then it kind of stops, and then just, it's just not even a turn, just almost just kind of a little tug. Good enough. All right. Check around all our edges, make sure we don't have any gaps. Make sure everything's seated okay and happy. And now we need, last but not least, we need to tighten our little set screw here. Again, you could probably put some maybe blue Loctite or something else. You don't want to put the red stuff or anything too tough on these small little threads here, because you put red Loctite on these little things and they're almost impossible to get off. Make sure that's tight. Just make sure our whip's in there tight for good measure. All right, all back together, and we're going to hook it up to the Randy and see if we got some light. Yep, looks like it. All right. Okay, once again, everybody behave themselves. No crazy stuff going on in here. You have no idea how terrifying it is wandering around in a garage full of whip antennas all over the place, and it's in pitch black in here. All right, there we go. Okay, so I think we have proven that that is a proper method for disconnecting or removing the light board in a STRYKER SRA10. So, all right, hopefully that'll help somebody. If nothing else, hopefully having the order of the parts of the the O-ring, the flat washers, the split washers, the spacers, the light, the LED board. Hopefully the order of all that and having all that will help someone. I know there's a ton of videos on this out there, and it's been done a million times, and these antennas have been around for a long time, but probably hasn't been anything recent in a while, and why not, right? So anyways, there you go. Shane, Gemini Garage. Thanks for watching.